Story 1. Peter, grab the locks from the garage. And hurry, we only have 2 hours left. I came back to Earth rather quickly and hustled towards the garage. That's when I heard a loud gunshot a few blocks away. I walked down the steps and flipped the light switch on in the garage. While I reached out for the locks, that's when it hit me. Tonight was Hallows Eve. You see, our town every year has a tradition. I'd call it more a curse, but that's beside the point. Every single year on Halloween something enters our town and takes 6 children for every 6 blocks. 3 boys, 3 girls. There's no way to stop the curse except avoid it at all costs. Lock your doors and board up your windows because this thing isn't human. That's all we know, simply because we've never had anyone who lives to tell us the tale of what truly is out there. I noticed these strange things happening around Halloween when I was 12 years young. I was laying down trying to fall asleep. It couldn't have been more than an hour until I heard the yelling coming from my parents. While I was sitting in my bed trying to make out what they were arguing about, my dog creaked open the door. I saw my dog walk down the steps and suddenly their voices became clear. I heard my mother say, "Michael, we can't be here tomorrow. It's happening. Don't you remember?" My dad retorted, "Of course I do, Linda. You don't think I'd send him to Jim's? Obviously. I would, but no. Someone had to book a last-minute vacation and never thought to tell a damn soul. Not even their goddamn brother. Jim? Uncle Jim, he was talking about how every year I go to my cousin's for Halloween." My mother responded calmingly, "It's going to be okay, Michael. There's always a solution. Peter and I will go down to the storm shelter tomorrow night. You'll stay up here and watch over the house. He'll be inside. There's no need to worry." I started to slowly inch my way towards the stairs when I heard a knock on the door. Father spoke loudly. "Who is it?" He started to walk towards the door when another 3 knocks banged loudly against my door. I heard a man speak behind the front door. "Deputy Sheriff's Department? Anyone home?" As I glanced around the wall, I saw a tall man with a shiny badge standing at the front door. He spoke, "How's it going tonight? I'm just stopping by to make sure you'll stay inside tomorrow night because you know how things go around here. We don't want you going anywhere, so feel free to call the station if you have any questions or require any assistance tomorrow night. Anywho, have a good night now." He shot a look over towards me before stepping off our front porch, which didn't help much, considering my nerves and anxiety were going through the roof currently. Dad closed the front door after wishing the officer a safe night. Tomorrow would be my very first Halloween in this little town since Kyle and Garrett are in the Bahamas. Like I mentioned earlier, I spend Halloween with my cousins every year, who only live a few hours south from here. I love when I would go there because they lived in a full candy bar type neighborhood. You know the type. Rich yuppies every so often, mini mansions, and sports cars around every turn. Also, my cousins are more akin to siblings to me, since I'm an only child. I would rather go over there any time of the day than sit 5 more minutes in this creepy old town. The reason I am documenting my experience here is for no other purpose than a warning. Don't try to search for this wicked town. Your intentions may be good, but all you'll walk out of this place with is more suffering than you thought was human. I mean it too. You'll feel it as soon as you pass by that damn welcome sign. It sneaks up on you like a cobra in the forest. You feel it crawl up your body and sink into your chest. The best way I can describe it is if you've been running down a dark tunnel for miles, but you haven't moved an inch. Mark my words when I tell you this. For anyone out there that wants to visit this wicked town, don't. That very night, my dad took his keys off the kitchen counter and hurried out the front door to go somewhere urgently. I woke up to a bunch of commotion downstairs. It sounded like a hammer banging up against a wall. Yawning, I rubbed my eyes and stretched my arms up. I got up and went over to my parents' room to see my mother getting ready for the day. I looked at her and asked, "What's Dad doing downstairs?" She replied with, "Oh honey, he's just doing some work on the house for tonight, that's all." She patted my shoulder, reassuring me. Halloween is tonight. What work needs to be completed for Halloween? Decorating? I walked downstairs to look beyond the wall, and I saw my dad boarding up the front door. I was certainly confused on what he was doing because what type of work for Halloween requires boards of wood shutting the front door off from the outside? I quickly acknowledged this and yelled over the banging, "Hey, Dad, why are you locking us out?" Thinking to myself I was confused. How would I be able to leave tonight to go trick-or-treating? After a moment he replied with, "Not out. And I'm sure your little mind is very confused because your mother and I haven't explained what's wrong with this town to you yet." I didn't even know what all of this meant, only being 12. I just wanted to go out and trick-or-treat. Last year was so fun and now my parents are taking it away from me. All I want is some candy and for some strange reason my dad is boarding up our house. I asked, "What do you mean wrong? What's wrong with this town?" My father must have smelled the concern dripping off of me, like a towel after being submerged in water. What was he locking us in from? He paused for a moment. "Let me explain. Every Halloween something evil comes out in this town. It hides in the shadows within these streets and will wait to prey on 6 children for every 6 blocks until it reaches the end of our town. Last year, they counted 18 missing. Nobody knew what was taking the children because no one has ever set eyes on it and lived on till the next morning to inform us. As the sunlight turns pale on All Hallows' Eve, remember this. You are never alone." My 12-year-old brain could only compensate for so much. One thing stood out to me, though. There was only 3 hours till sunset. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that my father was locking us inside with plywood boards all over our windows and doors now. What is it with this strange town? I've never really believed in monsters as a child. But now my parents believe something quite equal to that is out there. There's no way to get around this curse our town has. It's possessed with something that is far from human. I wanted to see what everyone was so scared of. It was almost 4 at this point and my mother made father and I our favorite meal, a pastrami sandwich. I was parched after devouring my lunch and my mother's famous iced tea suited the purpose. I was merely 2 sips away from finishing my drink when my father yelled from the other room, "Peter, grab the locks from the garage. And hurry, we only have 2 hours left." As the sun drifted away into darkness, the night crept upon the horizon, welcoming the evil in. My dad locked up the garage door and bolted 6 plywood boards upon the door into the house from the garage. He went to talk to my mother about something I'm not quite sure of. I then heard my mother say, "Peter, honey, let's go downstairs now. Your father is going to stay up here for the night to make sure nothing happens to us. I'll cook us a meal for later while you get your things ready for the night." I walked up the stairs to see my dog laying on the top. I told him to come into my room and closed my door. Looking out the window, I saw the sun setting. There was a purple-blue sky just over the sun's blissful orange corona. I stood there with my dog looking up at me for a few minutes just admiring the sunset. I wasn't worried about tonight nor frightful. No, quite the opposite. I felt this overwhelming sense of curiosity of what was upon that horizon. It almost felt as if something was pulling me towards whatever it was. It started happening just moments after I saw that green burst of light you see after the sun sets. This feeling inside of me gifted me with courageous amounts of inquisitiveness. Something was boiling up in my head to go outside and I just had to. Something sparked in my head. The key. I knew where the spare key was for the side door. If I could get that, I would be able to leave the house. The only problem is, my father will notice if I leave. I grabbed a sleeping bag and a few pillows downstairs. I dragged the sleeping bag all the way down to the basement while fighting with my dog Max since he keeps biting the back of the sleeping bag. I walked past the kitchen, getting a whiff of the amazing chicken pot pie my mother just cooked. I haven't had much thought on how I would get out tonight, but I did know how to get that key. It was on top of the refrigerator, so I climbed on top of the countertop next to the fridge. Feeling around the top of the refrigerator, I grabbed a few dust bunnies and the key. It was now dark out and I heard my mother calling me. "Peter, it's time. I have your meal down here, we need to shelter in place." I heard my father walking down the stairs and shoved the key in my pocket. I was always a pretty good liar, so when he abruptly asked what I was doing, I said, "Getting some water for us." I reached out towards the kitchen sink to turn it on. He replied with, "All right now. After that, get on down there with your mother." I smiled and took 2 glasses of water down to the basement where I was met with my dog Max and mother. I handed her a glass of water and said, I'm pretty hungry after smelling those remnants in the kitchen you left. She laughed and said, I set up a table for us over there. She pointed towards the other side of the basement. I saw a candle with a dimly lit flame on top of an old wooden table. It was passed down by my great-grandmother. That table was an antique. I always remember my mother saying not to touch it because I would get my fingerprints on it. I was shocked she was letting me eat dinner on it. I gave her a hug and sat down. Over this meal I ever so slightly kept feeling that urge in the back of my mind. I kept envisioning what was outside on this cold night. I finished up my meal by dropping some leftovers to Max. It was probably a few hours into the night at this point, and now that inquisitiveness I felt earlier was dwelling inside of me. It was like the anticipation a child has to wake their parents up on Christmas morning. I told myself that this feeling must be acted on. I wanted to be rebellious and be the first to figure out what this creature was. I developed a plan in my head. I asked my mother, Hey Mom, I need to go to the bathroom. Can I go upstairs? She glanced over towards me and debated for a minute. Yes, please hurry though, gesturing for me to go. I got up from my seat and walked up the creaky stairs. I unlocked the basement door to the main floor. My dad was sitting over near the front door overlooking the front yard. He was peeking out the blinds when he noticed me. Boy, what are you doing up here? He yelled. I need to go to the bathroom. Mom told me to tell you she needs to use the phone. Okay. Just give me a minute, I'll be right back. He got up from his seat and walked towards the basement door. This was my one shot to get out. I ran towards the side door to the house and unbolted the 6 door locks and took the key from my pocket to insert into the keyhole. I turned it and a stimulating sense of adrenaline shot through my veins as I stepped foot outside into the night. I was running down the street, rotating my head to see both sides of the road with houses boarded up like some ghost town. That's when I heard it for the first time. It was this piercing tone that pulsates its way through your body. I felt the hairs on my body rise as I keened in on where the sound was coming from. It was in the direction of my school. I wanted to stay hidden, so I took a longer way which took me on the park path. It would take 15 minutes to walk to the school from the way I was taking, and I was 5 minutes away when I had my first encounter with that thing. I heard it snickering, sending a sudden jolt of terror-induced goosebumps. I got low to the ground. I heard it a few hundred yards to the right of me. It was pitch black out and you could only hear a few crickets here and there. As soon as that thing made a noise, every other creature in the vicinity of it went quiet. It played that high-pitched snicker multiple times until it just stopped abruptly. I looked up to see if I could make anything out when I heard something else that caught my attention. I heard someone yelling in the distance. This creature must have heard it before I did because it went quiet. It took me a few tries to get exactly what the person was saying. It was definitely a male repeating something over and over again. Oh no, it was my father. My father called out to me, Peter, come home. Peter, come out. He was on the opposite path to the school, which was on the main road a few blocks from my house. There was a little forest in between us currently, but if I get to the school it wraps around. I also knew if I yelled out this thing would find me. I got up and started to run. I was only 5 minutes away, and if I ran I could make it in 3. My plan was to get inside the school, take a shortcut, exit the school and reconnect with my dad. As the wind rushed past my face while I ran, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. It was in the field to the right of me, not even 15 feet away. I saw this thing hunched over, just peeking its muscular neck out for me to see its black eyes glisten in the moonlight. That's all I needed to see for my legs to move just a little faster. I could see the school in my view at this point, so I turned back to see if I was being chased. Nothing but the blank pit of darkness which consumed the night. The door was locked from the inside. I needed a plan B. I looked around, but my hearing is what helped me that night. I heard my dad yell to the right of the building, so I headed that way. Right before I turned the corner to meet my dad, I heard that high-pitched tone that chilled you down to the bone. I felt some evil upon us, and I turned the corner to see my dad staring behind me. I looked at him with confusion, and that's when I sensed something behind me. We all were in the middle of the courtyard, and I asked, Dad, I'm scared. What should I do? He put his arm out and gestured a down motion for me to get to the ground. I understood this immediately and did what I was told. I got down on all fours and laid on the ground. That's when I heard it. This boy is righteously mine. I shall take him back to my home. Its tongue slithered in a way that it lisped its words. It sounded almost like a snake but humanoid. I was still turned away facing my dad when I saw him reach into his back with both hands. I heard something click when he began to speak. "You won't take my son, you monster. Go back to hell." My dad then pulled a pistol out from his back and aimed it at the creature. He didn't think twice about pulling the trigger. All I remember next was hearing that awful screech again, then hearing my dad in agony. He started screaming and I smelled burnt flesh. I saw this thing attaching itself, burning my father's skin off of his head right in front of me. He looked at me and said one last thing. "I forgive you." This monster was morphing into my father, shifting and contorting his muscles, seizing his brain, and burning his flesh off, all while it said in that alienatic, emotionless voice, "Peter's next. Peter's next. Peter's next." My dad, with what little control left of his body, took the pistol and raised it to his mouth, shoved it down his throat, and pulled the trigger. With all of this commotion, the courtyard's lights flickered on, and this creature began to flare up into a flame as the light shined down on it. I saw its veins spurt black liquid out as it died in agony. Its mouth was the last thing to ever move on it, and this sick demon said, "See you next Halloween, Peter." This all left me utterly speechless, as it would anyone. I sat there for hours until the police found me in my catatonic state. The reports show that they found me up against a wall that had black liquid smeared all over the walls that read, "Free me." I don't remember much of what happened after this, but my mother called the police after neither my father nor I showed up. Nobody believes me when it comes to that night. They locked me up at our local psychological rehabilitation center. They call me a sicko. Trust me, I wouldn't make this stuff up. The damn courts didn't believe me when I told them about that monster that killed my father. I was determined clinically insane with a year of inpatient rehab. I was allowed 1 hour of supervised internet access each day. I used this to my advantage and wrote this for all of you. I hope someone believes me because this post is my only option left. Apparently, the police say they never found my dad's body. All that was found at the crime scene was black sludge and a boy in shock from just witnessing his father's murder. I've made myself pretty comfortable here at the hospital. After the first couple weeks of hearing the often screams coming from the loonies down the hall, you get used to it. I actually made some friends while here. The only thing that makes me want to tear down that door is hearing that sick demon whispering down the hall at night. It only happens every so often, but when it does, I cover my ears with my pillow and hope it's not really there. Sometimes, I'll be sitting eating that disgusting lunch they give us, and upon all the chattering I hear it. Comes from the vents sometimes, or just outside the window where you can't see. Sometimes I even think I see him when I'm really drowsy after all the meds they give us here. He just sits there at the end of my hall, just waiting for me. I was sentenced to a full year the day after Halloween. Today marks the first day of October, which means he'll be back. I have to get out of here or I'll be killed just like my father was. Maybe I just should have remained hidden. Story 2. In second grade, I decided I wanted to be a second grade teacher. Not first grade, not third. Second. At the time, wanting to teach that grade wasn't weird, but as the years went on, as I finished elementary school, then middle, then high, it really is pretty odd. I always knew I'd teach second grade. This odd, specific occupational requirement never left, even when I actually did get through college and become a teacher. So that's where I am today, a 28-year-old single woman and a second grade teacher for 4 years now, or I was. That's the problem. I was fired 2 months ago. The cute, little school I've worked at for forever doesn't offer tenure, and I sincerely messed up. A mistake big enough to be fired immediately. The headmaster, that's what they call the principal at my charter school, told me himself he doesn't blame me. But with the angry parents, news coverage, and investigations, it really didn't look good for the school to keep me. That's okay. I feel terrible for letting the kids see what they did. That's for later though. It wouldn't make any sense yet. Let's just start with Halloween. Halloween was a big deal at the elementary school. Parties, decorations, a fall festival, you name it. Not a single wall of the school doesn't have some paper cut out of a witch or string of candy covering it. And for the 2 weeks leading up to Halloween, the teachers take turns selling apple cider after school to all the kids and parents picking them up. I was never, honestly, a very big Halloween person before teaching, but it really was fun. The school even gave each class a budget for Halloween parties. All I had to plan was 4 hours of party time. Fun, though admittedly not as easy as you'd think. Finding different activities to keep second graders busy without being too boring or too wild isn't simple. Yeah, I could have just put on a movie and let them play their own games the whole day, but I wanted to do something memorable, something fun. I came up with pumpkin carving. Yeah, I know. Carving pumpkins isn't the most original idea, literally everybody already carves one for Halloween. But when I asked the class, most kids said their parents didn't let them help carve the pumpkin, just draw the face or clean out the guts. No actual carving. And they all seemed pretty excited when I told them they'd get to do it on Tuesday, Halloween. The school told me as long as the only things we used were those cheap $3 carving tools, they would let me send home a permission form to the parents. When the due date for permission forms came, every single kid brought one in. Off to get the pumpkins. My budget, the one the school gave me, was enough for decorations, some snacks, the carving kits, and probably half the pumpkins, but I knew I'd have to spend a bit out of my own pocket to buy the pumpkins. Yeah, I don't have much money, but I was willing to pay $70 for these kids to have a fun Halloween. Not to mention for them to remember me as the best second grade teacher ever. The cheapest place was a small patch I found online. Most pumpkins were under $5, which sounded great. My only hesitancy were the reports of 3 missing people in that area. Recent reports. Disappearances aren't a big deal if you're with a friend, but for a lone woman in her 20s, I had to be careful, even if risking that area would mean less money from my own pocket. Initially, I found the pumpkin patch immediately. From the freeway I took to get there, the fields of green and orange were in my view. Only a thin fence separated me and the people wandering the fields. But after I pulled off and onto the road leading up, things got less simple. I'm a terrible driver. Honestly, I really am. Even worse with directions. Despite seeing the field the whole time, I couldn't for the life of me find the entrance. I literally drove around the whole pumpkin patch twice, not able to find the way in, and when I finally stopped at the side of the road and figured out directions, a parade came down the road I needed to travel on. Apparently, some middle school was having their homecoming football game that night, right on only road that led to the only pumpkin patch entrance. In short, a disaster. I was exhausted, it was getting late. The place was closing in less than 30 minutes, and I could do nothing but sit and watch a flock of 7th grade cheerleaders flounce by in their sickeningly short skirts. Looking down the street, there was still at least half a mile of parade floats and kids in costumes. Oh, and Halloween was the next day. Freak this, I whispered. My second graders would have to be content with Charlie Brown Halloween on repeat, 'cause I was done. Time to turn around and go home. Crap. Looking at the line of cars behind me, I realized there was no room to turn my car around. A truck, the scraped-up kind you see rednecks driving around, though with a hatch covering the back, was bumper to bumper with me, stopping me from reversing enough to avoid the parade in my U-turn. Great. Just great. This day was amazing. I got out of my car and walked up to the idiot who didn't know the whole leave people room at a stoplight thing. "Hey, I'm trying to turn around," I said after he'd rolled down his window. "Would you mind pulling back a bit?" He inhaled sharp and pointedly away from me. Then the man, the one wearing a cliché cowboy hat, turned and smiled. Not a polite smile. There was no goodwill, friendly neighbor attitude in his face. It wasn't even angry. The smile was cold and somehow just off. "You don't want to watch the parade?" he asked slowly, still smiling. His eyes gazed just a bit to the left of mine. "I was just trying to get into the patch. But there's no way I'll get to it in time now. It closes in half an hour." The man blinked. "The parade'll be done in 15 minutes. Run in and grab a pumpkin." "Yeah, well, I need 30 of them." "Really? I was just wondering if you could reverse a few feet, so I could." 30. The smiling man let out a long, high whistle. 30 pumpkins the day before Halloween? Girl, what do you need all those for? Then he started laughing, a laugh just as unhinged as his smile. Just wrong. Without seeing a mirror, I knew red was creeping up the edges of my faces. It really was ridiculous I'd waited this long. I know. I think I stuttered. It was just for my class. I'm a teacher and my second graders. Why are you laughing so much? Not to be rude, but I'm not in a great mood as it is. Girl, I ain't laughing at you. I'm laughing at the odds. The odds. The odds that a pretty young thing like yourself would be looking for 30 pumpkins the same night I happen to be getting rid of 3 dozen. My head cocked, the flush creeping into my face abetted. What? He pushed his car door open and jumped out, laughing his head off still. It was then I knew, for a fact, even if this man could drive a car, even if he could hold a conversation, something in his head was distinctly not right. Some condition, some mental handicap. It didn't stop me from following him around the back of his car and watching as he popped the trunk. The hatch had obscured the insides before, but now they were fully visible, revealing dozens of small round orange gourds. Pumpkins, just like he'd said. He picked one up, without saying anything, and walked to my car. This was too weird. Wait! I called out and raced after him. You're just giving these to me? Yep. Now pop open your trunk. We only got a few minutes to load all these, for the parade is over. For honestly, at least 10 seconds I just stood, flustered, unsure how to react to this bizarre turn of events, and then I started loading. Who cared if this man was odd if it got my second graders a great Halloween party? If he was going to throw them away anyways. None of the things were big, each smaller than a soccer ball, but they were perfect for my kids. The only odd thing was as I carried them was the tops. The pumpkins weighed about as heavy as they should without being cleaned out, but the top incision, the one around the stem that let you pull the top of like a lid, was done. On all of them. Are the insides clean? I shouted out as he loaded the final pumpkin into my noticeably sunken down van. In the distance, the final parade float was nearing. He shook his head. The guts are inside. Somehow, randomly, I had ended up with 36 perfect-sized pumpkins with the tops already cut out, and no charge at all for it. This was amazing. Thank you so much, I told the man. He winked and his smile grew wider, eerily wide. No, thank you. By the way, why were you throwing them away? Though his eyes had never fully made contact. This time he really was looking at something behind me. The parade's over. We should get back in our cars. He was right. I slammed my trunk closed, got in my car and turned right. He turned left. And that was it. The end of my interaction with the strange off man. The next day, as my kids began pouring into my classroom, I could tell they were excited. The way they smiled at one another, wiggled in their seats, and slung their backpacks to the floor was all more exuberant than normal. Couldn't blame them. I was the same. Everybody ready? I called out and was met with a chorus of chaotic yes. We laid out black trash bags over the tables and cut holes in the top and sides of them for us to get into. Handmade aprons. Each kid stood obediently in front of their pumpkin with a spoon in hand, ones I had told them to bring. They were ready to scoop out the innards. Okay. I finally said, let's start. For 1 minute on Blissful Minute, I was proud of myself. Look at me organizing all this and making my kids happy. I was a great teacher. Nothing could go wrong. Then came the red. Realizing the truth was the oddest part. It didn't happen suddenly. It hardly even happened at all. Really, it was just confusing. Why were kids suddenly screaming? Why were multiple of them puking over the carpet? What was going on? And why was there red? Dazed, I forced myself to the nearest pumpkin and stared inside. No. Inside the orange pumpkin, where a mass of string, seeds, and pumpkin guts should have been, was something very different. A heart. A human one. Covered in intestines and blood. Each pumpkin was the same. The smiling man had told me the truth. Guts are still inside. When the police came, they matched the DNA to the 3 people who had gone missing in the pumpkin patch area. I was fired the next day.